My approach was, I'm going to be unconstrained, and if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times harder, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Vivek Ramaswamy, oh my goodness. I'm so excited that this is finally happening. First things first, we're going to begin by you promising me that we can do this in person next time, correct?
Of course. This is just a preview. Yeah, this is just an introduction.
So this will be a quick hit. I'm in my studio now in Los Angeles, and we'll continue this at another time. But thank you for doing this. It's been, what, almost 3 months since you stepped aside and, suspended the campaign to run for president. What have you been doing since then?
Yeah, I have been doing it. It's potpourri of things, spending a lot of time with the family. I am proud we did the campaign together as a family. That being said, it was a whirlwind of a year. And so to take a little bit of time being a stay-at-home dad, and proudly so for the last couple of months, that's been my base responsibility. And then, I've been helping, a smattering of other activities. I'm committed to making sure that I can do everything I can to make sure Donald Trump's successfully elected and set up for success in a second term next year. So I've traveled with the Trump campaign and appeared with Trump and separately from him in helping his reelection efforts. I'm working on a number of things in the private sector and driving change. I founded a company before running for president called Strive that was trying to drive positive change through our private sector by encouraging corporate America to focus on excellence rather than social and political agendas as a shareholder. So that's an asset management firm being built into a broader financial institution. And so it's been great to get back at least involved as a mentor and founder in helping that business succeed. And there's probably going to be a few other things I'm doing in the private sector that'll come to light pretty soon as well. Addressing and tackling problems that either I learned more about on the campaign trail or even ones that motivated me to run for president, but which we can address in ways other than through just politics. And
Vivek,
so that's been my thing.
How many hours a night do you sleep?
More now than over the last year. I will say that. I can get by with as little as 4. Yeah. I'm not at my best unless I'm at 6 to 7. 8's a luxury night, and so I'm not like an insanely light sleeper. My wife actually sleeps less than I do. She's a surgeon at Ohio State, so many mornings on OR days she's gone before I wake up. So I'm not Kobe Bryant was like 4 hours a night solidly, right? And I think he was at his best. I can do 4, but I'm at my best with a little bit more than that.
It's amazing. And I'm visualizing when you wake up and your wife's already gone and you've got the 2 boys who are they 4 and 1? What are their ages?
Yeah, 4 and soon to be 2 would be the littler guy this July.
I mean, they're babies. They're babies. And so that's why, to me, I loved, because I'd followed you long before the campaign officially began.
But right?
Yes, one of the good things about social media, right, is to be able to discover people like you. And I was grateful to have learned a lot about you before the rest of the world did, I feel like. But when you brought your kids, you chose to bring your kids and your wife on the trail quite often. I loved it because, we have this genius here, this young, brilliant man who wants to make America great again in your own way, right? Yep. And the human element is so crucial to people like me, to women, to mothers, to say, he's this businessman, he's got all these ideas, but he's a father too. What was that like, though, as far as the balance, right? You're trying to be a present dad on the road, whether or not they're with you, and doing the biggest thing possible to run for president.
It was actually a learning from early in the campaign. So the first, I would say, month and a half to 2 months, because we were still figuring this out. We only decided as a family in January that we were truly committed to this. By February of 2023, I was in the race. I think February 21st was when I formally declared and announced. And so that first stretch, my wife's kept her job full time. That was important. She's great at what she does. And that's her passion. And so she kept her job. Raising our 2 boys and spending time together as a family is a priority as well. So we had me on the road and kind of the home life and then the campaign life. It quickly became apparent in like 6 weeks that just wasn't going to work, right? Yeah. This was an adventure that we actually expected to last longer than it did. It lasted about a year. We were planning for a year and a half to go the distance. And for a year and a half, having 2 separate projects and 2 separate lives, one me as a candidate, and then the other one is the family, and providing balance between those, that wasn't going to work. And so we decided that balance wasn't going to be the model, because if I was going to be competitive in the race. And one of the things we learned early on too was, even though maybe folks like you might have been following some of my work before I ran for president, most Americans weren't. The media that covers politics largely wasn't.
Right.
And so I was a non-factor. After declaring for president, the world was no different. The sun rose the same way and set in the west the same than the day that I did before I ran for president, which required my campaign in particular to be an all-out campaign, even more so than some of the people who were widely viewed as politicians running. So that caused us to shift and said, okay, I'm going to be all in. We're going to have to do this as a family. That's the only option. And we're going to be together as a family. We're going to make this a family project. And so Apurva made some, adjustments to the way she was going to be able to continue to do what she was doing, but to make it practical. Certain days she's in the operating room, had to be here. Other days she could do telehealth, even when we're on the road. And then decided that we're going to make this an experience for our kids. Not that there's going to be kid time separate from the campaign, but that is going to be a special experience that we all enjoy together. The campaign bus, we'll ride it. The back room of the bus ended up being a nap room for our little guys. And it was a heck of an experience that way. And especially for our older son, Karthik. Arjun, our little guy, is still, very much a baby. But Karthik was, I would say, certainly in the second half of the campaign, old enough to process some of what was going on. He knows that his parents were dedicated, spending a lot of time and effort, our family doing it together for something that was important, something bigger than ourselves, that he was part of that. He learned the Pledge of Allegiance while riding bus rides from one event to another, understood what that meant to him. We went to Washington, D.C. a couple of times during the campaign that, took us there for various things, connected that to what we were doing in diners in New Hampshire or farms in Iowa.
That's so special.
And I think that he will be, it's probably one of the first memories he'll have. You only get your first memories maybe when you're 3.5, 4 years old. And some of his first memories will be the experience of our family project of doing whatever we could to help save our country.
And my goodness, you talk about unique memories for a kid. It's one thing to go on family vacations or even to go to, take your daughter to work day. This is a little bit different when his father is doing something as grand as you were doing. Awesome. I hope you kept a good diary. And if not, okay, fine. Social media, everything's documented, right?
I should have. Actually, it's one of my great wishes during the campaign, but it actually, what you said makes up for it. Right now, we're really bad at taking family pictures. And so we didn't capture a lot of those moments ourselves. But the good news is the whole darn thing is very publicly documented anyway. And so we're actually going back and even for ourselves, just documenting and relishing some of those moments in retrospect that were just whizzing by at warp speed during the context of a year. We're actually picking up some of those pieces now and reflecting and enjoying a lot of what we took
no
away
matter
from that
what
year.
you decide to do politically in the future, what an incredible experience for you, for your family. I mean, so many blessings that came from probably a very chaotic time. Let me ask you now that the campaign part is over, what did you learn about yourself as a human being, as a man during that process?
I have to admit, it's still, it's been about 2.5 months, but I'm still at a stage now having enough distance from it to really reflect on that. So consider this a partial reflection. Okay. I'll give you two. Okay. One is kind of practical. I am by my nature drawn into, I would say obsession over success, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot when you're doing something this big that is necessarily out of your control. And so your ability to just sort of let go and believe that you're setting out to run for president. You know what? This is not just being done by me at every step through efforting and muscling through, which is sort of the way I built my businesses from the ground up as an entrepreneur. In this project, there's something more to it that you have to really embrace that it's being done through you, not by you. And I think that was probably a growth experience for me, to accept that no one is going to will themselves through their own hard work and effort to be the president. It's sort of being done. If that's what God's higher plan is, if I may invoke the G word here, if that's God's higher plan, then you're an instrument to accomplish it. And I think embracing that and being at peace with that was one of the things that I learned and grew into over the campaign. A little bit of detachment from the result versus when I actually started saying that, okay, here's the sole goal that I'm setting out to. By the end of it, the way I was at, and certainly even at the time that we ended the campaign, was that if this is, we're each put here for a purpose, and if this is my purpose, I'm going to carry it out, and if it's something else, I'm going to carry that out, and we're very open to that. That liberation, I think, was one of the things I took away from the process.
You kind of, fair to say, you kind of had to learn to let go of control.
Yes, absolutely. And you can't control everything. And I think embracing that was actually a sense of freedom for me once, I came to peace with that. The other thing I would say is, and this is a reflection of maybe some things that I would do differently if I were to do it again. At the start of the campaign, and where I am right now too, I'm back at that same place, was guided by the purpose of reviving this country, the purpose of doing what I could as a citizen of this country to pass that on to our kids so they could enjoy the same American dream that I did. In the thick of a campaign, it's like you're playing a sport, right? It's competitive. And so there are certainly points in the campaign, certainly in the middle of the campaign, in the thick of it, where you're going at 150 miles an hour and your competitive instincts take over. And to be clear, I think you need both of those things. But if I was to do it again, probably, I don't know, the best advice I would give myself would just take 20 minutes. Call it what you want: meditation, quiet time, reflection, daily, to ground yourself in your purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. Probably before that first debate, we were just going at warp speed, and I continued literally right to the point of the debate. It's traveling 9 different states in this 72 hours before the final weekend, before the first debate. I would have taken probably a week or two as a halftime moment, to borrow some sports analogies here, a little bit of a halftime locker room moment for myself to take a step back, understand and reground myself in the why we entered this in the first place. So that A, to be in touch with that myself, but B, to give people a chance to see that from me as well, as opposed to, by that point in the campaign, really being driven by raw competitive instincts. And, I think that can't just go too far in one direction. I think you need elements of both of that. You can't fight for the country if you're not going to be willing to fight in the context of a political campaign. We need a fighter in the White House, but it can't just be the fighter either. I think it has to be somebody who also understands the why for why they set out to do it in the first place. And I think that maintaining more of that balance throughout the campaign rather than getting into competition mode alone was something that, if I was to do it again, I would coach myself to remember throughout the arc of the whole thing.
Interesting. And then to carry that into everyday life now, I'm guessing, because I have to force myself every morning to take 60 seconds to breathe, right? Yeah. And before you even check your darn cell phone and start returning text messages, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I think from something that was so big and crazy, hopefully, you can bring that into your everyday life. And then by talking about it, you're reminding me to do the same thing. By the way, I was in Milwaukee. I had an opportunity to go to that debate.
You were there?
Yeah, it was so cool just to watch from afar as a viewer, as a proud American, right? Do you remember what that was like as far as emotions, butterflies, nerves leading up to it? Because again, I knew who you were from following you, but that was really the first time most Americans, I think, who were kind of like, we're like, whoa, who's this guy with these zingers? I mean, leading up to it and then during, especially when you'd get a ton of applause or people going, what did he just say? Like, what were your emotions around that day?
I didn't have many butterflies. I wasn't particularly nervous about it. I didn't really even take that time to pause or reflect enough to be nervous. We were running the campaign. We're going at full speed. And, that morning I woke up and said, you know what? We're going to have fun today. And I had part of what drove me into politics is I think that we do need more leaders who are not professional politicians in positions of leadership, especially executive positions, governors and the U.S. president above all. I think it is helpful to have people who don't aspire to be politicians, but see themselves as really leaders serving for a short time to be able to drive whatever change you can and then get the heck out of there. And so there was an interesting lead up to that second debate where I had been rising in the polls for the first time in the race, right? I was a non-factor for the first 4 months that I was in the race. And, that first debate stage, based on that rise, I was in the center of the debate stage. And that in the week or two leading up to that, invited, and this was new to me. I hadn't experienced this. Not like a spate of attacks, but I'm talking about a tsunami of tidal wave of attacks.
Yes.
And not from one candidate or the other, but literally the entire field and their super PACs had decided that I was going to be their target, which was new to me because 5 months before, I was literally purposefully, or not even purposefully, just ignored as an entity in the race. And so the combination of the fact that I believe we need fewer professional politicians in the business of the presidency, combine that with my disdain for the industrialization of politics, the super PAC pageantry that characterizes modern presidential politics, and then combine that with a lot of other, mostly entirely other professional politicians who were on that debate stage, created for me, I think, that competitive dynamic that I was talking to you about. And so my moment going into that debate was, all right, these people are hitting me hard. They didn't, give a second heed to who I was 6 months ago.
They were piling on. It was like a gang mentality.
That was the number one topic. 3 minutes into the debate, somebody gets a question about something else. They're finding that as a way to lob onto me. So my approach was, I'm going to be unconstrained. I mean unconstrained. I'm going to have fun. And if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back 10 times harder, and I'm going to enjoy it. And so that was, I think a lot of people appreciated that. A lot of young people, I think, appreciated that candor. I think a lot of people who weren't traditionally drawn to politics appreciated my, approach there. At the same time, that wasn't all I have to offer as a leader, right? And, the why of why I ran for president was to unite this country by centering us on the principles that the country was founded on, that made America great the first time around. That's how we're going to make America great again. Our founding fathers were people, many of whom were younger than me, even as a young person by far on that debate stage. Our founding fathers were people younger than me whose best days in life were still ahead of them. And they made a country whose best days in life were still ahead as well. And that's something that is a vision we're missing in our politics today, that there are certain values that unite all of us, whether we're Black or white or Indian or Hindu or Christian or, for that matter, Democrat or Republican. There are certain basic values, from free speech to meritocracy, to the pursuit of excellence, to the rule of law, that unite us as Americans, and I believe they still do. And that's what moved me into the race. But in the warp speed that we were running, I also happen to believe we need fewer professional politicians. Here's a bunch of professional politicians and their super PACs hitting back at me. I kind of went on with just treating it as a sport, right? We're in a sports stadium, and I didn't have any butterflies. I wasn't nervous about it. I wasn't constrained, but that was the approach that I took, where if I was to sort of do it again, you're right. That was the first time that most people in this country got a sense of even hearing about who I was, maybe take a little bit more time and effort to share in candor why I had entered this race in the first place, rather than just to go at 250 miles an hour and catching it midstream, which is what that ended up being. Although, it was grateful. I'm grateful for the experience. We had a lot of fun, and it was successful in a lot of ways.
It was.
That's also one of the learnings that comes out of it.
Listen, I know you have a plane to catch, so this is my last question for you, Vivek. First of all, what you just said there is what I still believe we need. I mean, that's why you rose so quickly in the polls, because people are like, yes, this guy is right. We don't want the politician. All of those things. You mentioned Donald Trump and how you're doing everything possible to get him back into the White House. What are the chances that Vivek Ramaswamy is, assuming let's just say he wins, but that you are part of his team, on his cabinet in some way, shape, or form? Because what you just said, I don't know many Americans that disagree with that. What are the chances that you are part of Team Trump going forward?
So look, I consider myself part of Team Trump now through the re-election, and I'm going to do whatever I can. It'd be my honor to serve this country. But right now, I think it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse. I think it's going to be a complicated 9 months ahead. And I'm going to do everything I can to reach people who maybe the Republican Party hasn't traditionally reached, younger voters, and even think about people like Indian Americans, people who are family members or whatever of mine. That's my, ethnicity, Asian American. Many of them went disproportionately the other way, 70-30, I think, in the last election. Think about first-generation Americans. Think about people who have maybe been disaffected from politics, libertarian-minded independents who have been disaffected from both parties. I think there's an opportunity to unite this country and deliver not a slim margin victory, but a landslide of Reagan 1984 style proportion. And so that's where my focus is. And if there's an opportunity to serve this country and have a big impact doing it, it'd be my honor to do that. But that comes later. I think
Yes.
the re-election, is the focus.
Listen, that will happen how it is meant to happen. In the meantime, I love that you have more time and the stay-at-home dad right now with Arjun and Karthik, right? Karthik?
Yeah, Karthik and Arjun. Yeah.
Karthik and Arjun and Apoorva, your beautiful wife. Again, that's what really, really matters. And I think that's what endeared you to so many people. I'm so grateful you took the time. Back to work, back on the next
Thank you.
flight. And I look forward to seeing you in person soon. But thank you for what you've done and for how you've done it for so many of us.
I look forward to seeing. Thanks for having me, and to be continued.
Thank you,
Excited.
Vivek. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.